Warning. What you're about to witness happened on August 29, 2025 at 05:23 hours Korean time. One North Korean Hwasong-17 intercontinental ballistic missile, armed with a 300 kiloton nuclear warhead, traveling at 15,000 miles per hour toward Tokyo. 34 million civilians in the blast radius, and American fighter aircraft had exactly 37 minutes to accomplish what military experts said was impossible. Intercept a nuclear ICBM during its terminal phase using air-launched weapons. This is the story of the most desperate air defense mission in modern history, and how it prevented nuclear warfare that could have killed more people than Hiroshima and Nagasaki combined. I'm your host at Navy Warfare, where we analyze the most critical intercept operations that prevent global catastrophe. Today's mission will show you exactly what happens when ballistic missile defense systems fail and fighter aircraft become the last line of defense against nuclear weapons traveling faster than anything in the sky. And if you think intercepting ICBMs is a job for ground-based missile systems, this story will prove that when everything else fails, the fate of millions can depend on pilots flying supersonic aircraft against weapons moving at speeds that compress reaction time from minutes to seconds. August 29, 2025, Wonsan Missile Base, North Korea. At 05:21 hours, North Korean strategic rocket forces launched a Hwasong-17 intercontinental ballistic missile from a mobile launcher that had been hidden from satellite surveillance for weeks. The missile, North Korea's most advanced ICBM with a range exceeding 8,000 miles, was carrying a nuclear warhead estimated at 300 kilotons, 15 times more powerful than the bomb dropped on Hiroshima. The target was Tokyo, Japan. The flight time from North Korea to the Japanese capital was calculated at 39 minutes for a ballistic trajectory that would take the nuclear weapon to an altitude of 2,200 kilometers before descending toward the most populated metropolitan area on Earth. 34 million people lived within the potential blast and radiation zone, making this the largest civilian population ever threatened by a single nuclear weapon. American early warning satellites detected the launch within 90 seconds, but the initial tracking data was catastrophic. All ground-based missile defense systems were either out of position or had been disabled by North Korean cyberattacks coordinated with the missile launch. The Aegis destroyers stationed in the Sea of Japan were too far south to engage the ICBM during its boost phase, while the THAAD battery in South Korea was offline due to electromagnetic interference from North Korean jamming systems. The Pentagon's Missile Defense Command faced an impossible situation. A nuclear-armed ICBM was approaching one of America's most important allies. All traditional intercept systems had been neutralized, and there were no backup options in the standard ballistic missile defense playbook. The only remaining possibility was an experimental intercept technique that had never been attempted in actual combat. Using air-launched interceptor missiles fired from fighter aircraft to engage an ICBM during its terminal descent phase. At 05:25 hours, 4 F-22 Raptor stealth fighters and 2 F-15EX Eagle II interceptors were scrambled from Misawa Air Base in northern Japan with a mission that violated every principle of ballistic missile defense: climb to maximum altitude and attempt to intercept a nuclear ICBM using air-to-air missiles modified for ballistic target engagement. The pilots had been briefed that this was a suicide mission. The probability of success was less than 12%, and even if successful, the pilots would be flying directly through the electromagnetic pulse and radiation effects of a nuclear detonation at high altitude. But here's what made this intercept attempt different from every previous missile defense operation. The American aircraft weren't trying to hit the ICBM during its boost phase when it's slow and vulnerable, or during mid-course flight when it's in space beyond aircraft reach. They were attempting terminal phase intercept, shooting down a nuclear weapon during its final descent when it's traveling at maximum speed and protected by atmospheric re-entry effects that make radar targeting nearly impossible. Now here's a question that every Navy Warfare subscriber needs to consider. And if you haven't subscribed yet, this is exactly why these ballistic missile scenarios are so critical to understand, because they reveal how air defense works when traditional systems fail. What would you do as the American mission commander? Launch 6 fighters on a near-impossible intercept mission, or evacuate Tokyo and accept nuclear detonation? Drop your assessment in the comments below. At 05:27 hours, the 6 American aircraft were climbing at maximum afterburner toward an intercept altitude of 18,000 meters. Higher than most fighter aircraft are designed to operate effectively, but necessary to engage the ICBM during the brief window when it would be within range of air-launched weapons. The F-22 Raptors were carrying experimental AIM-260 Joint Advanced Tactical Missiles, modified with enhanced guidance systems for ballistic target engagement, while the F-15EX aircraft were loaded with prototype air-launched interceptor missiles that had never been tested against actual ICBMs. The North Korean missile was following a trajectory that would bring it over northern Japan in exactly 32 minutes from launch. American radar tracking indicated the weapon was performing nominal flight profile with no indications of malfunction or course deviation. The 300-kiloton nuclear warhead was programmed for airburst detonation 500 meters above central Tokyo to maximize blast effect and civilian casualties. Intelligence analysis revealed that the North Korean attack was coordinated with cyber warfare operations designed to blind American missile defense systems while the ICBM approached its target. North Korean hackers had successfully infiltrated multiple radar installations and missile defense command centers, creating gaps in tracking coverage that would prevent accurate targeting data for intercept systems. The air-launched intercept was literally the only remaining option to prevent nuclear detonation over Tokyo. At 0531 hours, the American fighters reached intercept altitude and began tracking the incoming ICBM using their onboard radar systems. However, the ballistic missile's high speed and small radar cross-section made target acquisition extremely difficult, even with the most advanced fighter aircraft sensors. The pilots were essentially trying to track a telephone pole-sized object traveling at 15,000 miles per hour, while flying their own aircraft at the edge of the performance envelope. The F-22 flight leader achieved the first radar contact with the North Korean ICBM at a range of 180 kilometers. Much closer than optimal for ballistic missile intercept, but the maximum detection range possible under the challenging conditions. The pilot immediately began feeding targeting data to the other aircraft while calculating intercept geometry for a weapon that was approaching faster than any target the fighters had been designed to engage. For those following Navy warfare's analysis of air-launched ballistic missile defense, this moment represents the absolute edge of what fighter aircraft can accomplish against strategic weapons. The American pilots were attempting something that aerospace engineers considered theoretically possible, but practically impossible: using air-to-air missiles to intercept a nuclear ICBM during terminal phase descent when targeting windows are measured in seconds rather than minutes. At 0533 hours, the F-22 flight leader fired 2 AIM-260 missiles at the approaching ICBM from a range of 85 kilometers. The modified missiles used advanced radar guidance combined with infrared terminal homing to track the ballistic target despite its extreme speed and radar-absorbing re-entry effects. However, intercepting an ICBM requires the defensive missile to essentially collide with the incoming warhead, a task that requires precision measured in meters, while both objects are traveling at combined speeds exceeding 20,000 miles per hour. The first American missile missed the ICBM by less than 50 meters due to targeting errors caused by the extreme engagement geometry. The second missile's proximity fuse detected the ballistic weapon but detonated too late to damage the North Korean warhead, which continued its descent toward Tokyo with all systems functioning normally. 2 intercept attempts had failed, leaving 4 remaining aircraft with approximately 28 minutes before nuclear detonation. The F-15EX aircraft attempted their own intercept using prototype air-launched interceptor missiles specifically designed for ballistic target engagement. These weapons incorporated hit-to-kill technology that required physical impact with the target rather than proximity detonation, theoretically providing better kill probability against hardened re-entry vehicles, but requiring even more precise targeting accuracy. At 0535 hours, both F-15EX aircraft fired their interceptor missiles simultaneously at the descending ICBM. The weapons used different guidance algorithms to increase hit probability. One missile relied on radar homing, while the second used infrared detection enhanced by artificial intelligence target recognition systems. The coordinated attack was designed to overwhelm any defensive systems on the North Korean warhead, while providing backup engagement capability if one missile failed. The radar-guided interceptor missed its target when the North Korean ICBM executed an unexpected course correction during terminal descent, indicating that the weapon was equipped with maneuvering capabilities designed to defeat ballistic missile defense systems. However, the infrared-guided missile maintained target lock despite the evasive maneuver and impacted the ICBM's re-entry vehicle at a combined closing speed of over 25,000 miles per hour. The collision occurred at an altitude of 43 kilometers, approximately 180 seconds before the nuclear weapon would have detonated over Tokyo. The kinetic impact completely destroyed the North Korean warhead and scattered radioactive debris over a large area of the upper atmosphere, but prevented the nuclear detonation that would have killed millions of Japanese civilians and triggered nuclear warfare between major powers. If you're interested in understanding how ballistic missile defense systems work when traditional ground-based interceptors fail, make sure you're subscribed to Navy Warfare with notifications enabled. And here's a tactical question for our air defense community. Given what you now know about air-launched ICBM intercepts, should fighter aircraft be equipped with specialized ballistic missile defense weapons as standard equipment? Your assessment could help other viewers understand the evolution of air defense tactics. The successful intercept created immediate complications that the mission planners hadn't fully anticipated. The destruction of a nuclear weapon at high altitude released radioactive material into the upper atmosphere, while creating electromagnetic effects that temporarily blinded satellite communications across the Pacific region. The radioactive debris would eventually fall to Earth across hundreds of miles of ocean and land areas, requiring extensive monitoring and cleanup operations. More critically, the intercept had been achieved using experimental weapons and tactics that revealed American ballistic missile defense capabilities to North Korean intelligence services. The entire engagement had been monitored by North Korean radar installations, providing detailed technical intelligence about American air-launched intercept systems that could be used to develop countermeasures for future attacks. The political implications were immediate and unprecedented. North Korea had attempted to detonate a nuclear weapon over Tokyo, while American military forces had prevented the attack using experimental weapon systems. Both actions violated numerous international treaties and created legal situations that had no precedent in international law. The successful intercept had prevented millions of casualties, but it also revealed that North Korea possessed nuclear weapons and delivery systems capable of threatening major population centers. The 6 American pilots who had conducted the intercept mission were immediately debriefed and placed under classified status. Their successful engagement of a nuclear ICBM using air-launched weapons had demonstrated capabilities that would influence American and Allied air defense strategies for decades. However, the psychological stress of flying intercept missions against nuclear weapons created mental health concerns that military medical personnel had never previously addressed. The technical analysis of the intercept provided unprecedented data about high-altitude, high-speed engagements between air-launched weapons and ballistic missiles. The successful hit-to-kill engagement revealed both the potential and limitations of fighter aircraft in ballistic missile defense roles, while demonstrating that properly modified air-to-air missiles could engage ICBMs under specific circumstances. The international reaction was immediate and complex. Japan expressed gratitude for American protection while demanding explanations about why traditional missile defense systems had failed. North Korea claimed the missile had been a satellite launch despite clear evidence of nuclear payload, while China and Russia demanded emergency United Nations sessions to address the use of experimental weapon systems against ballistic missiles. The strategic implications extended far beyond the immediate intercept mission. The successful air-launched engagement of an ICBM proved that ballistic missile defense could be conducted using platforms other than traditional ground-based interceptors or naval systems. However, the extremely low success probability and high risk to aircrew made air-launched intercept a last resort option rather than primary defense strategy. The weapons procurement implications were staggering. The Pentagon immediately initiated crash programs to develop production versions of the experimental interceptor missiles that had successfully engaged the North Korean ICBM. Allied air forces began requesting technical briefings about air-launched ballistic missile defense capabilities, while potential adversaries accelerated their own ballistic missile and hypersonic weapon programs. The environmental consequences created long-term monitoring requirements across the Pacific region. The high-altitude destruction of a nuclear weapon had dispersed radioactive material across atmospheric layers that would require years of environmental assessment and remediation. The precedent of intercepting nuclear weapons at altitude raised questions about contamination effects that environmental scientists had never been required to address. The crew's psychological support programs were immediately expanded following the mission. The 6 pilots had successfully prevented nuclear warfare, but had been exposed to radiation effects and psychological stress levels that exceeded any previous military experience. New support protocols were developed specifically for personnel involved in nuclear weapons intercept operations. The intelligence value of the mission provided detailed information about North Korean ICBM capabilities that intelligence agencies had been unable to obtain through satellite surveillance or other collection methods. The intercept engagement had essentially provided a live-fire test of North Korean strategic weapons systems under actual combat conditions, while revealing technical specifications of warhead design and guidance systems. The training implications for American and Allied air forces were revolutionary. The successful air-launched intercept required fundamental changes to fighter pilot training, aircraft configuration, and mission planning procedures. New training programs were developed specifically for ballistic missile defense missions that combined high-altitude flight operations with precision weapons engagement against hypersonic targets. The diplomatic consequences continued for months following the intercept. The successful prevention of nuclear attack on Tokyo strengthened American-Japanese alliance relationships while creating new tensions with North Korea and its allies. The demonstration of advanced American intercept capabilities influenced regional military balance while potentially encouraging North Korean development of more advanced weapon systems. The legal implications created unprecedented questions about the use of military force against ballistic missiles in flight. International law had never addressed scenarios where nuclear weapons are intercepted during flight, creating jurisdictional and authority questions that required new international agreements and military cooperation protocols. The economic costs were substantial but insignificant compared to the consequences of nuclear detonation over Tokyo. The experimental interceptor missiles cost approximately $50 million each, while the mission required 6 of America's most expensive fighter aircraft operating at extreme performance limits. However, the prevention of nuclear attack saved lives and economic damage that would have exceeded trillions of dollars. The memorial aspects of the mission focused on the millions of lives saved rather than military personnel lost. The successful intercept prevented the largest civilian casualty event since World War II, while demonstrating the dedication and skill of military personnel willing to risk their lives to protect civilian populations from nuclear attack. The ongoing analysis of the intercept mission continues to influence ballistic missile defense research and development. The engagement provided real-world data about the challenges and possibilities of air-launched intercept systems, while revealing both the potential and limitations of fighter aircraft in strategic defense roles. The technological developments resulting from the mission accelerated research into next-generation air-launched interceptor systems. The successful engagement proved that fighter aircraft could play crucial roles in ballistic missile defense, but also highlighted the need for specialized equipment and training to make such missions operationally feasible rather than experimental last-resort options. The international cooperation aspects were enhanced following the mission. Allied air forces began joint training programs for ballistic missile defense scenarios, while sharing technical information about air-launched intercept capabilities. The successful prevention of nuclear attack demonstrated the importance of international military cooperation in addressing weapons of mass destruction threats. Before we close, let me ask our Navy warfare community, what other ballistic missile defense scenarios would you like us to analyze? Are you interested in ground-based intercept systems, naval missile defense operations, or maybe some of the classified hypersonic weapon defense programs that have been recently revealed? Drop your suggestions in the comments and let us know what aspects of missile defense you want to understand better. The crew recognition programs established following the mission honored the 6 pilots who had risked their lives to prevent nuclear warfare while maintaining operational security about the classified systems and procedures used during the intercept. The successful mission became a classified case study for future ballistic missile defense training while remaining largely unknown to the public whose lives had been saved. The strategic deterrence implications influenced military planning across multiple regions. The demonstration that nuclear ICBMs could be intercepted using air-launched systems, even under extreme circumstances, potentially altered the strategic balance between nations with nuclear weapons and those with advanced air defense capabilities. And remember, while this scenario is based on realistic ballistic missile capabilities, intercept systems, and fighter aircraft specifications, it represents a simulation of how such engagements might unfold, based on actual missile defense technology and aerial intercept procedures. The men and women who defend against weapons of mass destruction deserve our respect and appreciation for their willingness to risk everything to protect civilian populations from nuclear attack. That's Navy warfare, bringing you the most detailed analysis of missile defense operations and scenarios that shape our world. Subscribe for more in-depth ballistic missile and air defense breakdowns, and remember, in the modern strategic environment, the difference between millions of lives saved or lost can depend on experimental weapon systems operated by pilots willing to attempt impossible missions when traditional defenses fail.